Before we begin the video, I would just like to say that every time I hear of a war or people getting killed because of some power struggle, it makes me wonder, can humans ever change, or will they just reenact past tragedies again and again and again? Sirens ringing in Kiev marked the start of a war in Europe on 24th February. We have all seen news reports like these.
Russia, under Vladimir Putin, has launched what U.S. officials describe as the most significant military action in Europe in 77 years.
And spine-chilling scenes like these. In this video, we will discuss what is happening in Ukraine, and then we will try to understand who's responsible for it. What is happening in Ukraine is more important to understand because who is responsible is not that difficult to understand. As Leo Tolstoy said, in all history, there is no war which was not hatched by the governments alone, independent of the interests of the people to whom war is always pernicious, even when successful. So let's begin by what is happening in Ukraine. There are two separatist areas in eastern Ukraine, Donetsk and Luhansk. Russian President Vladimir Putin says he wants to recognize them as independent countries and has thus announced a war, calling it a peacekeeping mission. But Putin will not want to stop at these areas and would instead want to invade whole of Ukraine. Russia has positioned more than 150,000 troops to surround Ukraine, from Belarus in the north to Crimea in the south. These troops are supported by hundreds of tactical aircrafts, helicopters, and Russian Navy. Putin has also warned the outside forces that try to hinder him would face consequences like never before. Till now, Kremlin has not made a clear argument to justify the war. This has the possibility of being the biggest war in Europe since 1990s, and if Russia goes all out, it could be the biggest war in Europe since World War II. That carries consequences like human suffering, refugee flow, economic consequences, etc. Since NATO is not deploying its own military, the only option left is economic sanctions on Russia. But we all know it is very unlikely that sanctions will stop Putin. Now, let us come to the second part of the video. Who is responsible for this war? Firstly, it is such a 90th, 20th century thing to happen that you can't believe it is happening in 2022. And since Russia has not given a clear reason for the war, we are left to wonder what it could be. There are two theories. First, according to some analysts and experts, is that the reason for this war itself boils down to just a power struggle. While the US President Joe Biden has stated that Putin is trying to restore the Soviet Union, it is much more likely that he just might be trying to re-establish Russia's influence in Eastern Europe and has violently opted to do so. No one is an innocent party in this. Russia, the West, and not even Ukraine's own President Volodymyr Zelensky for that matter. The United States, by far NATO's most influential member, has used NATO expansion eastward to project its own power, completely isolating Russia on the world stage and not treating it as an equal. US also dangled NATO membership in front of Ukraine for years, despite having absolutely no intention or the possibility of ever including it, unnecessarily antagonizing Putin, who might just have acted before Ukraine's Western-friendly government could outmaneuver him. But Zelensky could have taken a bold stand and announced that Ukraine has no aspirations of joining NATO. Some argue that this would not have dissuaded a Russian invasion. But the truth is that now we will never know. Since Putin has continuously maintained for 2 decades that NATO expansion is viewed as unacceptable to him, especially to Ukraine.
Depend on the negotiation. They will depend on the unconditional compliance with the Russian security demands today and in the historical context. In this sense, we have made it clear that any further NATO movement to the east is unacceptable.
And has used Zelensky's publicly stated desire to accede as a justification for war. Forfeiting NATO membership might very well have been worth the effort. So basically, America sought to expand its influence, Russia sought to expand its, and Zelensky refused to make a decision about NATO membership that never would have happened anyway. Finally, we are left with absurd death and destruction for the war that never needed to happen, but invaded a sovereign country just because you don't like its elected governments is entirely unjustified. Which brings us to the second theory, which is that since in a rational analysis of cost and benefits of any normal politician, this doesn't make any sense. But it does make sense from the point of view of Vladimir Putin. Because when our kids and grandkids read history books, Putin does not want a few lines or even a chapter. He wants a whole book. And if you want a book, you have to invade a country. But the thing about books is that maybe you can't judge a book by its cover, but you can by its first few chapters, and certainly by its last.